The cowboy heard the scream cut through the morning air like a knife through butter. Sharp, desperate, the kind that makes your blood run cold even when the sun's already baking the Texas prairie at 9 a.m. He'd been checking fence lines on the eastern pasture when that sound reached him, coming from somewhere near the old creek bed where the cottonwoods grew thick. His hand went to the revolver on his hip out of instinct. 20 years ranching this land, and you learned quick that screams in the wilderness meant trouble. The bad kind. Could be a rattler, could be worse. He spurred his horse toward the sound, heart pounding against his ribs like it was trying to break free. The cowboy was 38, weathered from sun and wind, with hands calloused from rope and leather. Since his wife passed 3 years back from pneumonia, he'd kept to himself mostly. The ranch was his world now, 1,500 acres of scrubland and cattle, where the only voices he heard were his own and the occasional ranch hand during branding season. But that scream, Lord have mercy, it sounded female and terrified. He pushed through the brush, branches whipping at his face, his gelding picking its way carefully over the rocky terrain. Then he saw her, sprawled near the creek bank, one leg twisted at an angle that made his stomach turn. A young woman, maybe 25, with auburn hair spilling from beneath a riding hat, her face pale as moonlight. "Before we move on, take a break with me, Joe. Pour yourself a warm cup of tea, settle in, and tell me what time it is, where you are listening from, and if you are enjoying this story so far. Consider subscribing. It helps more than you know." "Don't move," the cowboy called out, dismounting in one smooth motion. He approached her carefully, taking in the scene. Her horse stood 20 yards away, reins dragging, favoring its left foreleg. Thrown, he figured. "I can't," she gasped, tears streaming down dirt-smudged cheeks. "I can't close my legs. Something's wrong. God, it hurts so bad." The cowboy knelt beside her, and that's when he saw it. Her riding skirt had torn in the fall, and wedged between her thighs, driven up against her in the most unfortunate way possible, was a jagged piece of deadwood, thick as a man's forearm. The branch had somehow caught her during the fall, pinning her legs apart in a position that would be comical if it weren't so damn dangerous. "Easy now," he said, his voice steady despite the awkwardness of the situation. "I'm going to help you, but I need to see what we're dealing with here." Her eyes went wide with panic and shame. "You can't. I'm not. This isn't proper." "Ma'am, proper went out the window the second that branch decided to get personal with you." The cowboy's jaw tightened as he assessed the situation. The wood was lodged tight, pressing against the inside of her thighs. Any wrong move could tear flesh, cause serious bleeding. "What's your name?" "Catherine," she whispered. "Catherine Wells. I was riding to my uncle's ranch, the Wells Spread, about 10 miles north." The cowboy knew the place. "I'm going to have to cut your skirt to get a better look, Miss Wells. I apologize for the impropriety, but if that wood shifts wrong, you could bleed out before I get you to help." Catherine's breath came in short, panicked bursts as the cowboy pulled out his knife. The blade gleamed in the dappled sunlight filtering through the cottonwoods, sharp and purposeful. "I'm going to be as respectful as I can," he said, meeting her eyes. They were green, he noticed, the color of new grass after spring rain. "But I need you to trust me right now." She nodded, biting her lower lip so hard he worried she'd draw blood. The cowboy worked carefully, cutting away the torn fabric of her riding skirt until he could see the full extent of the problem. The branch was wedged at an angle, one end driven into the soft creek bank, the other pressed dangerously close to her femoral artery. Her legs were forced apart, trembling with the effort of holding the position. "Sweet mercy," he muttered. This was worse than he'd thought. The wood was splintered, dozens of small barbs catching on her undergarments and skin. One wrong pull, and those splinters would tear her up something fierce. "Is it bad?" Catherine's voice was small, frightened. "It's manageable," the cowboy lied. "But I'm going to need to get real familiar with your anatomy here, Miss Wells. And I need you to know I'm not taking any liberties. This is pure necessity." Her face flushed crimson. "I understand." The cowboy positioned himself carefully, one hand on her knee to steady her. His touch was gentle despite the calluses, and Catherine felt something unexpected, a warmth that had nothing to do with the Texas heat. This stranger with sun-creased eyes and capable hands was treating her with more tenderness than any man ever had. "On 3, he said. "This is going to hurt." The cowboy gripped the branch with both hands, positioning his body to shield Catherine from the worst of it. He could feel her trembling, could smell the fear sweat on her skin, mixed with something floral, lavender, maybe, from whatever soap she used. 1. He adjusted his grip, feeling the rough bark bite into his palms. 2. Catherine squeezed her eyes shut, her hands fisting in the dirt beside her. The cowboy didn't say 3. He'd learned in the war that counting just made the anticipation worse. Instead, he pulled hard and fast, angling the branch away from her body with practiced precision. The wood came free with a sickening crack, and Catherine screamed, her back arching off the ground. "Done! It's done!" the cowboy said quickly, tossing the cursed branch aside. He immediately checked for bleeding, his hands moving over her thighs with clinical efficiency, even as his heart hammered. There were scratches, angry red lines where the bark had scraped, but no deep cuts, no arterial spray. "You're okay. You're going to be okay." Catherine sobbed with relief, her whole body shaking. Without thinking, the cowboy gathered her into his arms, letting her cry against his chest. His shirt grew damp with her tears, and he found himself stroking her hair, murmuring reassurances like he would to a frightened horse. "I've got you," he said softly. "You're safe now." They stayed like that for a long moment, two strangers wrapped together under the cottonwoods, the morning sun climbing higher. The cowboy became acutely aware of her softness against his hardness, the way she fit perfectly in the circle of his arms, the scent of her hair. He cleared his throat and gently pulled back. "Can you move your legs now?" Catherine tried to close the legs and gasped. "They're numb. I can't feel them properly. Oh, God, what if—" "Circulation got cut off," the cowboy interrupted, keeping his voice calm. "It'll come back, but it might hurt worse than the branch did. I need to massage the blood flow back into your muscles." Her eyes widened. "You can't be serious." "Dead serious, Miss Wells." The cowboy's jaw set in a stubborn line. "You want to risk permanent damage? Because that's what happens when blood doesn't flow right. I've seen men lose limbs from less." Catherine looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. He had a strong face, weathered but honest, with eyes the color of whiskey. There was gray threading through the dark hair at his temples. He looked like a man who'd known hardship and survived it. "What's your name?" she asked. "Most folks just call me Dalton." "Well, Dalton," Catherine said, her voice steadier now, "I suppose I'm in your hands." The cowboy started with her calves, his strong fingers working the muscles with surprising gentleness. Catherine gasped at the pins and needles sensation as blood rushed back into her limbs. His hands moved higher, to her knees, her thighs, and despite the pain, despite the impropriety, she felt something else entirely. Heat. Want. Awareness. Dalton felt it too. He tried to keep his touch professional, but there was nothing professional about the way his pulse quickened when his hands pressed into the soft flesh of her inner thighs. Nothing clinical about the way his breath caught when she made a small sound that was half pain, half something else. "How does that feel?" His voice had gone rough. "Better?" Catherine whispered. "Much better." "I should get you to a doctor," Dalton said, but he didn't move his hands. They rested on her thighs, warm and steady, and neither of them seemed willing to break the contact. "My uncle will kill you if he finds out about this," Catherine said suddenly. "He's very particular about propriety, very controlling." "Is that why you were riding alone out here?" Catherine's expression darkened. "I was trying to escape, actually. He's arranged a marriage for me, to a banker in Dallas. A man twice my age who smells like cigars and treats women like property." She laughed bitterly. "I was going to make it to El Paso, start over somehow. Stupid plan, I know." Dalton's hands tightened slightly on her legs. "Not stupid. Brave." "Brave would have been not falling off my horse like a fool." "Your horse stepped in a prairie dog hole," Dalton said, nodding toward the animal. "I can see it from here. Wasn't your fault." Catherine looked at him with wonder. "You're kind." "I'm practical," he corrected, but his eyes said different. "And I know what it's like to feel trapped." He paused, then added quietly, "My wife didn't want this life. The ranch, the isolation. She endured it for me, and it killed her spirit long before the pneumonia took her body." "I'm sorry." "Me too." Dalton finally moved his hands away, immediately missing the contact. "Can you stand?" Catherine tried, but her legs buckled. Dalton caught her, and suddenly they were face to face, her hands on his shoulders, his arms around her waist. The air between them crackled with something dangerous and electric. "I should let you go," Dalton said, but he didn't. "You should," Catherine agreed, but she didn't move either. "My ranch is closer than your uncle's place," Dalton said, his voice low. "You need to rest. Let those legs recover properly. I've got a spare room, it's clean, and—" "Yes," Catherine interrupted. "Yes, I'll come." They both heard what she didn't say. "I don't want this to end." Dalton lifted her onto his horse with ease, then mounted behind her, his arms coming around to hold the reins. Catherine leaned back against his chest, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady rhythm of his breathing. They rode in silence, the morning stretching toward noon. The ranch house came into view after 15 minutes, a sturdy timber structure with a wide porch and wildflowers growing wild in the yard. It looked lived in but lonely, like it was waiting for laughter to fill its rooms again. Dalton carried her inside, and the moment felt weighted with possibility. He set her gently on a settee in the parlor, then stood there awkwardly, unsure what to do with his hands. "I'll make coffee," he said finally. "Dalton?" Catherine's voice stopped him. "What's happening here?" He turned back, his expression raw and honest. "I don't know, Miss Wells. But I haven't felt anything in 3 years, not since Sarah died. Just emptiness and routine and the slow passing of days. Then I heard you scream, and something in me woke up." Catherine's breath caught. "I felt it too. When you touched me, when you held me. I know it's impossible. We've known each other barely an hour, but—" 23 minutes, Dalton said, "since I heard you scream. 23 minutes, and you've turned my whole world sideways." Catherine stood on shaking legs and crossed to him. "Then let's not waste another minute being sensible." Dalton's restraint shattered. He pulled Catherine into his arms and kissed her with 3 years of loneliness and hunger, and she kissed him back with equal desperation. Her fingers tangled in his hair, his hands spanned her waist, and they stumbled backward until she was pressed against the wall, gasping. "We shouldn't," Dalton groaned against her neck, even as his lips traced the line of her jaw. "I don't care," Catherine whispered fiercely. "I don't care about shouldn't. I was supposed to marry a man I don't love, live a life I don't want. For once, just once, I want to choose." "Choose what?" "You." She pulled back to look at him, her green eyes blazing. "I choose you, Dalton. Even if it's just for today, even if the world says it's wrong, I choose this." Something broke open in Dalton's chest, something that had been locked down tight since Sarah's death. "I haven't been with anyone since my wife." "I haven't been with anyone at all," Catherine admitted, her cheeks flushing. "But I'm not afraid. Not with you." Dalton lifted her, and she wrapped her legs around his waist. Those same legs that had been trapped and helpless, now strong and eager. He carried her to his bedroom, the room he'd kept shut and dark for so long, and laid her on the bed with reverence. What happened next was tender and fierce, awkward and perfect. Catherine's inexperience met Dalton's careful passion, and they learned each other in the slanting afternoon light. She traced the scars on his back. He kissed the scratches on her thighs, and they whispered confessions between gasps and sighs. After, they lay tangled together, sweat-slicked and satisfied, the world outside forgotten. The sound of horses brought them crashing back to reality. Dalton was at the window in seconds, pulling on his pants, his expression hardening. 5 riders. One of them's carrying a Wells Ranch brand on his saddlebag. Catherine's face went white. "He found me. Uncle Marcus." "Get dressed," Dalton said quietly, tossing her one of his shirts, since her riding clothes were ruined. "Stay in here." "No." Catherine's chin lifted with defiance. "I'm not hiding. Not anymore." They met the riders on the porch together, Catherine wearing Dalton's too large shirt and her torn riding skirt, her hair loose and wild. There was no mistaking what had happened between them, and Catherine didn't try to hide it. Marcus Wells was a barrel-chested man, with cold eyes and a cruel mouth. "Catherine, get your things. You're coming home." "No, Uncle, I'm not." "The hell you're not. I've got a wedding arranged, contracts signed. You've embarrassed me enough with this little stunt." Dalton stepped forward, his hand resting casually near his gun. "The lady said no." Marcus's eyes narrowed. This doesn't concern you, rancher. She's my niece, my responsibility. She's a grown woman who can make her own choices, Dalton said evenly. And she's choosing to stay. With you? Marcus laughed harshly. A dirt-poor rancher living in the middle of nowhere? I'm offering her society, wealth, a position. You're offering her a cage, Dalton corrected, and I'm offering her freedom. Catherine moved to stand beside Dalton, taking his hand. The gesture was simple but profound. I'm staying. You don't own me, Uncle Marcus. No one does. Marcus's face purpled with rage. You'll regret this, both of you. Maybe, Catherine said softly. But it'll be my regret to own. They watched the riders disappear in a cloud of dust, then turned to face each other in the settling silence. You know this won't be easy, Dalton said. Your uncle will make trouble. Society will talk. And this life, it's hard and lonely sometimes. I know, Catherine said. But I'd rather be lonely with you than surrounded by people in a life that isn't mine. She took his face in her hands. 23 minutes. That's all it took for me to know. Know what? That you're my home. Not a place, not a house. You. Dalton pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. I can't promise you luxury or comfort, but I can promise you honesty, respect, and every bit of love this broken heart has left to give. That's all I've ever wanted, Catherine whispered. They stood there on the porch as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. In the distance, cattle lowed. A hawk circled overhead. The wind carried the scent of sage and possibility. What do we do now? Catherine asked. Dalton smiled, really smiled, for the first time in 3 years. We live, we build, we choose each other every day until choosing becomes as natural as breathing. I like the sound of that. So there you have it, friends. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best beginnings. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and share it with someone who believes in unexpected love.